We will ultimately eliminate the Federal Department of Education.
Now taking steps to dismantle the agency.
We've cut the number of bureaucrats in half, 50%.
Slashing the number of employees from 4,100 down to 2,100.
Is what democracy looks like.
As people across the country protest, a White House fact sheet directs Education Secretary Linda McMahon to take all necessary steps to close the department and return education authority to the states.
Trade is collapsing, education is under attack, and social welfare is being gutted, all direct consequences of Donald Trump's policies. As America struggles with inflation and economic instability, Trump is only making matters worse. But the real question remains, do Americans still trust Trump and the Republican Party after all this damage? Trump is turning America's allies into economic adversaries, pushing the country toward a trade disaster. He raised tariffs on imported steel and aluminum by 25%, directly hitting key trade partners like the EU, Canada, and Mexico. The EU retaliated swiftly, slapping tariffs on American goods, 20% on cars, 25% on whiskey, and 30% on agricultural products. The fallout? U.S. companies lost over $15 billion in revenue within the first year of the trade war. Economists warned that inflation would rise, and they were right. Consumer prices surged 12% over 2 years. Thousands of manufacturing jobs vanished, especially in Midwest states like Michigan, Ohio, and Wisconsin. Meanwhile, Trump's approval ratings in agricultural states plummeted by 9% as farmers struggled with retaliatory tariffs from China and Europe.
Department of Education, the Wall Street Journal has a draft of an executive order in which the president directs Education Secretary Linda McMahon to start the process of shutting it all down. Citing sources, the Journal says the order could come as soon as today, but White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says not so fast, posting on social media that nothing is coming today. In fact, the executive orders we've seen today have not had to do with this. But she notably did not say that an executive order to try to neuter the Department of Education is not coming at all.
But the economic damage doesn't stop there. Trump also launched an unprecedented assault on education. Over half of the Department of Education staff was fired, crippling federal programs that support schools. His administration even staged a fake security emergency to forcibly evacuate employees, only to permanently lock them out of their offices. The impact has been devastating. Funding for special education programs was slashed by 40%, leaving 6 million children without essential services. Low-income students also suffered as the school lunch assistance program lost 30% of its budget. Public schools in states like Texas, Florida, and Ohio are warning of severe budget shortfalls, potential teacher layoffs, and overcrowded classrooms. In just 6 months, dropout rates among students with disabilities spiked by 18%. Former Department of Education officials have spoken out, calling this more than budget cuts. It's a deliberate attack on equal access to education.
We can't be hurting our kids.
Basic education enriches our communities, and it's hard to imagine a world without that.
I think what we do today has national implications, and I hope that we come out and show a strong message that education matters, that teachers' voices matter, and that we are going to show up and stand up for kids.
Trump claims to fight for America, yet his policies are forcing millions into crisis. He slashed $880 billion from Medicaid, stripping health care from over 80 million low-income Americans. At the Department of Veterans Affairs, 70,000 employees were laid off, even as 19 million veterans rely on the VA for medical care. Meanwhile, 7,000 workers at the Social Security Administration were fired, causing massive delays in processing retirement and disability benefits. The consequences have been dire. In just 1 year, over 4 million Americans lost health insurance. VA hospitals in New York, California, and Texas are overwhelmed with wait times doubling. People with disabilities now wait an average of 12 months for benefits, double what it was before. Veterans are speaking out. "I fought for this country, but now I have to fight just to get health care," one veteran said. "Trump isn't protecting us, he's abandoning us. Trump isn't a champion of the working class, he's exploiting them while enriching the elite." Democratic lawmakers have called it the greatest political scam in history. A new poll reveals that 45% of former Trump voters now feel betrayed. Protests have erupted across the country, from Washington to New York to Chicago, demanding an end to social welfare cuts. The choice is clear: allow Trump and the Republican Party to continue their destruction, or take a stand and reclaim the future. And if you think this is bad, what's coming next will change everything. For over a decade, Ohio has been a Republican stronghold, but frustration is growing as Trump's economic policies wreak havoc. Job losses, trade wars, and funding cuts have hit the state hard. Factories are shutting down, farmers are struggling, and federal jobs are vanishing. Even Ohio's Republican leaders are starting to push back. Has Trump's presidency harmed Ohio more than it helped? His administration's inconsistent economic policies have left businesses and workers in limbo. Tariff hikes, removals, and reimpositions have disrupted trade relationships with China, Canada, and Mexico. As a result, Ohio's key industries, including soybeans, corn, pork, dairy, and wheat, have suffered severe export losses. Many farms are shutting down, unable to compete in the volatile market. Then there's the CHIPS Act betrayal. Originally introduced to bring billions in high-tech investments to Ohio, the act created thousands of new jobs in the state. But Trump has now threatened to eliminate it, putting Ohio's technological future at risk.
When President Trump attacked the CHIPS and Science Act during his joint address.
Your CHIPS Act is a horrible, horrible thing. We give hundreds of billions of dollars, and it doesn't mean a thing. They take our money and they don't spend it. You should get rid of the CHIP Act, and whatever's left over, Mr. Speaker, you should use it to reduce debt, or any other reason you want to.
While members of the party instinctively stood up and clapped in the moment, there's actually little momentum among GOP lawmakers to repeal the bipartisan legislation. NBC News reports, though Republicans were aware of Trump's opposition to the legislation, senior lawmakers were not given a heads up that Trump would make those demands during his joint address, and they have no plans to take up a repeal of the law.
Thousands of federal employees in Cleveland, working for the VA, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, and the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, are facing layoffs. Cities across Ohio are feeling the impact, with federal budget cuts leading to widespread job insecurity. Ohio's farmers, once hopeful about Trump's promises, now feel abandoned. His erratic trade policies have driven up production costs and hurt exports, leaving rural communities struggling. The economy's future looks fragile. According to a Federal Reserve report, the U.S. GDP could decline by nearly 3%, raising fears of a recession. Businesses across Ohio are hesitant to hire, wary of Trump's unpredictable policies. Even Trump's own party is questioning him. In a recent speech, he falsely claimed that Haitian immigrants had destroyed Springfield, Ohio. The city's Republican mayor immediately refuted his statement, calling it blatant misinformation and fear-mongering. Now, mayors across Ohio, Democrats and Republicans alike, are uniting against policies that are hurting their state. Even Ohio's Republican Governor Mike DeWine has spoken out in support of Ohioans over Trump's harmful policies. Ohioans are waking up. The question is, will they continue to stand by Trump, or will they fight for their future? While Americans face rising prices and job losses, Trump seems more focused on lengthy speeches than real solutions. During his record-breaking 2-hour address before Congress, he dedicated less than 5 minutes to the economy. Meanwhile, financial struggles in Ohio continue to mount, with families feeling the weight of economic instability. Recent trends suggest that Ohio is no longer a guaranteed red state. The economic turbulence caused by Trump's policies has taken a toll on farmers, workers, and major cities. Trust in his leadership is eroding, potentially paving the way for a significant political shift in the next election. Could Ohio become a swing state once again? Stay tuned, because what comes next will change everything. For struggling Americans, this supposed resurgence of national pride feels more like political wishful thinking than reality. Trump boasted about economic prosperity, claiming that jobs are abundant and wages are rising. But is this a reflection of reality, or just another well-crafted political narrative? Despite Trump's rosy outlook, many Americans continue to struggle with high living costs, unstable financial markets, and wage stagnation. Household expenses are rising faster than income, and economic confidence remains shaky. So is America really thriving, or is this just another carefully polished political performance? Trump used his speech to highlight his achievements while portraying Democrats as unwilling to acknowledge his success. He framed himself as a fighter standing up against an unfair political system. This sharp critique underscores the deep political divide in the country. While Trump presents himself as a misunderstood leader battling a corrupt system, his critics see his speeches as little more than grandstanding. Carefully crafted performances designed to rally his base. The real question remains, is Trump leading America forward, or is he simply selling a narrative that no longer aligns with reality? For more insights on the happenings in the political world and globally, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to our channel. Why do countries like China and Japan own U.S. debt? You've probably heard that nations like China and Japan hold a significant portion of U.S. debt. But what does that really mean? More importantly, why do they do it? When the U.S. government needs funds, it issues Treasury securities, essentially IOUs that guarantee repayment with interest. Foreign governments buy these securities, effectively lending money to the U.S. government. But why invest in U.S. debt? U.S. Treasury bonds are considered some of the safest investments globally. The U.S. has a long-standing track record of honoring its financial commitments, and the U.S. dollar remains the most widely used currency in international trade. For countries looking for low-risk places to store their wealth, U.S. Treasuries are an attractive option. Many nations, particularly those with large exports to the U.S., accumulate significant reserves of U.S. dollars. Instead of keeping that cash idle, they invest in U.S. debt, allowing them to earn interest while keeping their own currency stable and exports competitively priced. This is a key part of managing national reserves. Governments maintain foreign currency reserves as a financial cushion, and the U.S. dollar plays a central role in these reserves. Purchasing U.S. Treasuries allows them to store these dollars securely while earning a return rather than leaving funds unused. In some cases, holding U.S. debt also strengthens economic and political ties, fostering mutual interests and reinforcing diplomatic partnerships. How often is U.S. debt data published? The U.S. Department of the Treasury provides regular updates on how much foreign nations hold in U.S. government debt. This data is released monthly in a report called the Treasury International Capital (TIC) report. It tracks which countries are increasing or reducing their U.S. Treasury holdings and by how much. Key holders like China, Japan, and the United Kingdom feature prominently in these reports. The data is typically published in the middle of each month, reflecting numbers from 2 months prior. For instance, a report released in March will cover holdings as of January. A global shift, recent sell-offs of U.S. debt. In a major shift between November 2024 and January 2025, numerous foreign governments and financial institutions significantly reduced their U.S. Treasury holdings. This widespread sell-off, amounting to roughly $390 billion, marked one of the largest declines in foreign-owned U.S. debt in recent history. Unlike past sell-offs that were region-specific, this one was global, involving countries across North America, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Leading the sell-off was Brazil, which offloaded approximately $55.9 billion in U.S. Treasuries. Ireland, a financial hub for multinational corporations, reduced its holdings by $42 billion, while the Cayman Islands cut its exposure by $41.2 billion. Canada, traditionally a close U.S. ally, sold off $37 billion worth of U.S. debt, drawing attention to potential shifts in economic strategy. Other notable reductions included Norway, $35.6 billion, India, $34.9 billion, United Kingdom, $26.6 billion, Singapore, $26.5 billion, South Korea, $22 billion. Even longtime major holders like Japan and China trimmed their U.S. Treasury holdings, each selling off $7.8 billion. While modest relative to their total investments, their participation in this trend suggests a broader shift in global financial strategy. What's driving the sell-off? Several factors contributed to this wave of U.S. debt reductions. 1. Rising U.S. interest rates. As interest rates climb, older bonds with lower yields become less attractive. Investors, including foreign governments, often shift away from existing treasuries in search of better returns. 1. Currency market volatility. The strength of the U.S. dollar and instability in global currency markets have prompted central banks to diversify their reserves and minimize dollar-denominated risks. 1. Geopolitical tensions. Heightened U.S.-China tensions, the aftermath of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and concerns over U.S. sanctions have led several countries to rethink their reliance on U.S. assets. Some fear their assets could be frozen or weaponized in future geopolitical conflicts. 1. Concerns about U.S. debt levels. With persistent budget deficits and rising national debt, foreign investors are questioning the long-term sustainability of U.S. borrowing. 1. Political uncertainty. The timing of this sell-off aligns with Donald Trump's return to the presidency in January 2025. His America First policies, emphasis on protectionism, and history of unpredictable trade and economic strategies may have prompted foreign governments to hedge their risks. The impact of Trump's presidency on U.S. debt holdings. During Trump's first term, from 2017 to 2021, he disrupted global trade norms by imposing tariffs, withdrawing from multilateral agreements, and leveraging financial tools like sanctions to achieve policy goals. Now that he's back in office, many governments are bracing for similar policies and preemptively adjusting their financial positions. Early in his second term, Trump has already reinstated tariff threats, reassessed trade agreements, and taken a hard stance on foreign investment in key U.S. industries. This has raised concerns among foreign investors, who prefer stability and predictability when managing long-term financial assets. Additionally, Trump's criticism of the Federal Reserve and proposed tax cuts alongside increased defense spending signal potentially larger budget deficits, further driving foreign investors to seek alternative assets like gold and euros. Another key consideration is the weaponization of financial systems. Under Trump's previous administration, the U.S. used its control over global finance to impose sanctions and freeze assets. Some governments wary of a repeat scenario are actively reducing their reliance on the U.S. financial system to avoid future risks. New U.S. tariffs, what to expect. As of April 2, 2025, the U.S. plans to implement reciprocal tariffs, adjusting import taxes to match the rates imposed on U.S. exports by its trading partners. This move, central to Trump's America First agenda, aims to reduce trade imbalances and protect American industries by ensuring foreign nations impose equal tariffs on U.S. goods. The effects of these tariffs will be wide-ranging. Domestically, prices on imported goods may rise, fueling inflationary pressures. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell has warned that these tariffs could slow inflation reduction efforts in the short term. Globally, trade disruptions and shifting supply chains could reshape economic relationships, forcing some nations to seek alternative markets. Global reactions to U.S. tariffs. The announcement of these tariffs has already triggered reactions from key trading partners. European Union, the EU is reviewing the tariffs' compliance with World Trade Organization rules and may respond with countermeasures targeting iconic U.S. products like motorcycles, whiskey, and agricultural goods. China Beijing has already retaliated by imposing tariffs on U.S. agricultural exports and restricting certain imports, with possible legal action at the WTO in the works. Canada. The Canadian government has launched public consultations on potential counter-tariffs targeting $125 billion worth of U.S. goods. Final thoughts. Between the large-scale foreign debt sell-offs and escalating trade tensions, global financial and economic landscapes are shifting rapidly. The next few months will be crucial in determining how these moves impact international markets and diplomatic relationships. If you found this analysis insightful, please like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement helps us reach a wider audience. Thanks for watching. Reducing trade barriers and the economic impact. Efforts to streamline trade within Canada are gaining momentum. By harmonizing regulations and establishing national standards, the government aims to create a more efficient domestic market. Studies suggest that eliminating internal trade barriers could reduce trade costs by up to 15% and boost economic growth by 4 to 8%. Amid escalating global trade tensions, Prime Minister Mark Carney has announced an early parliamentary election on April 28, 2025. This move is designed to strengthen the government's mandate in navigating the ongoing trade dispute and defending Canadian economic interests. The impact on U.S. agriculture. Few sectors are more vulnerable to these escalating trade tensions than American agriculture. U.S. farmers rely heavily on international markets, with key export destinations including China, Canada, Mexico, and the European Union. In 2023 alone, agricultural exports exceeded $170 billion, with products like soybeans, corn, wheat, pork, and beef leading the way. Foreign governments, particularly China, have already hinted at retaliatory tariffs on U.S. agricultural products, echoing the trade disputes of 2018 to 2019. If these tariffs are imposed, U.S. farm goods will become less competitive globally, leading to surplus stockpiles and falling prices. This could directly impact farm incomes and further strain rural economies, which are already facing financial pressure. Beyond the direct export market, farmers are grappling with higher costs for essential equipment and inputs. Tariffs on fertilizers, steel, and machinery parts, many of which are imported from Canada, Germany, and Japan, are expected to drive up operational expenses. Smaller farms may struggle to absorb these cost increases, potentially accelerating industry consolidation or forcing some farmers out of business altogether. Challenges for the U.S. auto industry. The automotive sector, deeply intertwined with global supply chains, is also poised for significant disruption. Industry experts warn that tariffs on imported vehicle components, including engines, electronics, and steel parts, will raise manufacturing costs. On average, 40 to 50% of a car's parts come from outside the U.S., making automakers highly sensitive to import tariffs. The Center for Automotive Research estimates that these new trade policies could add between $1,000 and $3,000 to the price of a typical vehicle, potentially discouraging purchases. With auto loan rates already high, the increased costs could further suppress consumer demand. A slowdown in vehicle sales could have serious consequences for employment. The auto industry supports nearly 10 million U.S. jobs, spanning factory workers, engineers, dealership employees, and technicians. Lower production volumes may lead to layoffs, particularly in Midwestern states like Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana, where the auto industry is a crucial economic pillar. Retaliatory tariffs from the EU, Mexico, and South Korea could also target U.S.-made vehicles and parts, restricting international sales. This would directly impact major automakers like Ford, General Motors, and Tesla, which rely on global markets for expansion. What's your take? How do you see these trade policies affecting industries and the global economy? Share your thoughts in the comments. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. If you found this discussion valuable, please like, subscribe, and stay connected with our community. Your support means the world to us. Now check out another video from our channel. It's on the screen now.